So I'd like to invite up Rakesh Sood from Docomo Capital and Mike McSherry from Swype. Rakesh. Mike? Thanks. Yeah, please, please. I'll grab the obtuse one at the side. All right. I refer to my notes on this one. So let's ask you to do the usual and introduce yourselves to kick it off, and then we'll go into a discussion. Rakesh?
So I'm venture advisor to Docomo Capital, located here in Palo Alto. So we have a $100 million venture fund, which we invest for strategic interest to Docomo and return on capital, just like other VCs. And we have made 20 investments so far and look to actively engage with companies to invest additional dollars.
Great. Mike?
And I'm Mike McSherry. I'm the CEO of Swype, which is a text input for touchscreen devices, phones, tablets, and in the future, set-top boxes, TVs, anything you could touch, point a finger at, or even a remote control. And I think there's going to be some presentation of how Swype works in a bit.
Yeah,
so
we get the video up in a second or two, I guess, and we'll sort of that, and I'll kind of explain what it does. But the notion is basically faster text entry, which leads to what? What's the benefit?
Faster, easier text input on devices. It was actually invented based upon disability research. People without limited motor control, people in wheelchairs, would use head tracking software to track an on-screen keyboard. And letter selection was a pause or a dwell time or a puff on each and every letter. And someone said, what if you just did a continuous eye trace? Could you actually predict the words? And I think you'll see a demo of it here shortly.
All right.
But it's led to mainstream success.
So Aaron, up in the room, are we queued for video? We are not queued for video. Oh, all right.
Okay. No worries. So to continue on a little bit for Swype, if people aren't familiar with it, it's been deployed on soon to be 100 million devices by the end of this year, easily, I think. We've signed contracts with 9 of the top 11 phone OEMs in the world and 3 of the top 4 PC OEMs in the world. And again, I think you'll expect to see us on other platforms soon.
Yep. So I think a lot of people know it. It's a great input device, and I think one of the questions I get is it obviously gives greater customer satisfaction, quicker input. It's nice, but does it drive additional revenues, and what are the economic benefits or the business benefits for OEM partners who deploy it or for carriers who work with it?
Well, so with OEMs and carriers, they're both out to improve the end user experience.
Yep.
And I think when you had the initial transition to touchscreen devices, people lamented the fact that they were giving up physical QWERTY keyboards,
right.
and this helped ease the transition, certainly, we believe. And you could go into, there's increased data usage, there's more messaging, there's higher ARPU plans,
yep.
People are browsing more with easier input entry, and so it cuts across the whole communication realm of increased usage.
It helps mean more, essentially.
Yes.
So Rakesh, we know Docomo pretty well. I hope everybody knows about Docomo, the innovations that helped there with iMode in the late 90s and how much that was a leader in bringing the mobile data revolution. But can you tell us a little bit about Docomo here in the USA? I know there's been some changes recently. You could also maybe tell us about those.
So Docomo locally has been around for a long time, about 11, 12 years of research presence. Mm-hmm. In the local area. Currently, the office is being in Palo Alto. And then about 5.5, 6 years ago, we started the venture group with venture investing in promising startup companies. And then as of this summer, we launched another initiative called the Docomo Innovations, and the purpose of which is to directly engage with startup companies or even larger companies for that matter, and some joint business development, joint development work, and be able to offer perhaps a new slew of network service offerings that could be helpful to not only Docomo customers in Japan, but elsewhere as well. So that's the new initiative. And we, from the venture point of view, would invest in companies, and from a innovations point of view, they would partner and do some joint development work as appropriate on a case-by-case basis with startup companies.
Sounds like you're either developing laryngitis or your batteries are dying. So if I could, if I could ask for a handheld, we'll get a handheld microphone down here to swap that out shortly. So and I had the next question for you, but I would be wise to wait for you to get a microphone and switch gears a little bit and say. So Mike, what is the business model for Swype?
So our business model is a per device licensing fee to OEMs. Mm-hmm. and all of our commercial agreements are with OEMs. We've got 19 OEM partners on a global basis right now. We do work with carriers to help influence the OEMs, especially as carriers care about the user experience, the out-of-box experience. We are the keyboard for devices, usually says the default keyboard. Yep. So it greatly impacts the usage experience, and carriers have a huge say in that development.
Is your licensing fee, is that something that's done as a per activation, like if a user actively chooses it, or is most of the cases it is the default, as you said?
It's a per device fee.
Yeah, regardless of activation.
Yes.
Okay, great. Rakesh, you got the mic again, so we're back in business. In the previous panel, I was saying I think carriers historically have had a little bit of problem if they have to go to business units to get approval to make investments. What is your situation at Docomo? Has it changed over the years? What is the process you go through when you decide whether to make an investment or not?
I think the process is fairly straightforward. There needs to be some validation from the business unit in terms of the strategic interest in the startup company's technology and solution. But beyond that, it's really up to the Docomo investment team locally to do the due diligence and figure out if it makes investment sense. And we've done that process in the case of Swype here as well, and with the other investments. So in that sense, we don't really need an agreement, a contract, and so on and so forth. That could happen over time. I like in the process to sort of two trains running on parallel tracks. One is on the biz dev joint development side, the other one on the investment side, and the two sort of keep in sync with each other, but don't have to be absolutely synchronized in time.
So you're able to pull the trigger without waiting for full buy-in and such.
Right.
So that has obviously led to some successful investments you were able to make versus kind of I think it has been a decade since I saw some telco efforts really stagnate or stutter when they were unable to pull the trigger.
Right. And the success eventually is measured in terms of exits and strategic value. I think strategic value is more and more tangible and more near-term perhaps, and the exits can take place whenever they do. And we've had some successes, and we're waiting for others as the market, the turbulence diminishes somewhat.
So sticking with talking about Docomo, you're here in Silicon Valley. Your goal is to, specifically yours, is to find the great investments, find the positive ROI that have this strategic tangent that work with the parallel tracks you talked about. How do you do that, and how do you meet them? And I guess that's the main thing. How do you funnel companies?
Well, it's always a difficult exercise because you got to make sure that it has strategic value, and so we have dual objectives. The other one being, of course, good financial investment, just like financial VCs. So I've been, in the Valley for about 20 years and have a large network of people I know, entrepreneurs, VCs, and so on and so forth. So in terms of funneling and finding and scouting for those opportunities, that really helps a lot. And to the extent we can add strategic value, that helps in terms of being part of the syndicate and being a value-added provider and investor in the companies. So I think that's been sort of the process. Once we identify those companies, we introduce them to the business units back in Japan just to have some feedback, and so we can get them feedback both in terms of strategic fit and also the possibility that it could be deployed by a large carrier like Docomo in the near future. So that feedback we find is very, very helpful to the startup companies in any case. And if we end up having an investment, then we have a much more intimate relationship with that company.
So in the case of Swype, could you give us a little bit of an example of how you met with Swype and how that process developed?
Right. So we met Swype at the Telecom Council a couple of years ago. So here's another example of a startup company being introduced to a carrier here. And then after that introduction, we got to know the company a little bit better and figured out that it was a really great UI experience. And as Mike already talked about, for a carrier and its subscribers to have a great user experience, we always look for new innovative technologies, and this certainly was one. So as we looked at it further, it was still not in the available for Japanese subscribers at that point, but we knew that over time it would be developed in that direction. So working with the other investors in the company, so Samsung as well as Nokia, we participated in the investment round at that point in time. And then we introduced this to the business units in Japan and have been working since to get the Japanese version of that technology available on the handsets there.
So I don't know, how complicated is taking Swype, the concept, and transferring it to the Japanese language?
It is difficult. Swype supports 55 languages now, and Japanese is the hardest one. And,
Wow.
and so it's still in development. So when Nokia Samsung co-led on the investment with Docomo's participation, and obviously our business model is selling to OEMs, so Nokia and Samsung were slam dunks. With Docomo, we made the case internally that Japan is strategic for us on two folds. Yep. One, there's a lot of consumer electronic companies, and we wanted introductions and relationships with those. And second, we wanted to penetrate the Japanese market, and to do such, we had to develop a Swype Japanese version, which is incredibly complex. The kanji, hiragana, conversions, and so Docomo's helped us out on both those fronts. We've signed a number of OEM customers for mostly export-related activities, Toshiba, Kyocera, Sharp, and others. But we will soon be introducing a Swype Japanese version that we're going to be quite proud of.
So in Japan is kind of a unique market as well, because it's characterized by a lot of handset vendors that we don't see here from the European or from North American perspective, like Fujitsu and Sanyo and such, Sharp making handsets for that market. So is the Docomo investment, is that really important for you in terms of pulling those handset vendors over to Swype? Yeah.
For a U.S.-based company or any company looking to go global, the question is how do you expand your business? And do you have brokers over there? Do you hire staff and R&D staff? With Docomo coming in as investor, it was a perfect introduction into all of those partners. They've got the relationships, and provided we provide an excellent keyboard experience, it makes it sort of a slam dunk experience. Here in the U.S. and parts of Europe and other parts of the world, we're part of the carrier specs, so that the carriers request or require Swype to be part of the device platforms that the OEMs come to, and that's what we'd like to achieve globally.
So I think Swype originally pitched to the Telecom Council Service Provider Forum in the summer of 2009.
Yes.
How do you feel about the pace that you experienced with Docomo in terms of their ability to respond to entrepreneurs and a startup company's needs?
Oh, well, Docomo has been fantastic. We're the ones that haven't finished our Japanese version to launch in that market. Docomo, the investment came around quite quickly. We had actually had the commercial deals in place with Samsung and Nokia and other investments, and this was our first institutional fund. So when they wanted to come in and invest in the company, they already had the product support of their teams, and I think it's the first time that they've co-invested together into a company. And with Docomo participating alongside of that, we just thought we'd put together the perfect partnership for our business model, selling into OEMs and having carrier support.
I think one of the things to keep in mind is that we don't want to interrupt the natural business progression for any company and their development cycle. So if Japan marketplace entry is at a certain point in time, that's fine, because it doesn't have to happen right away, right after the investment. So we have to go along with what the company's roadmap is, and then play along, when the time is right for that introduction. And that whole process started about 9 months ago.
Right. Yeah, so it is possible that the Docomo adopts some other solution in Japan just because they don't want to wait for because you said there's dual tracks, and they may diverge or they may converge going forward, right? Yeah. Excellent. A couple of questions to frame frame us around the history of Swype is what year were you founded, and what was the growth, and what are you at now in terms of headcount, for example?
So we're a fairly unique company in that our founder worked on this technology, self-funded it, filed IP for 7 years, never showing it to anyone, essentially in his garage. He was the co-founder, co-inventor of T9, the predictive text that's on 5 billion devices, sold that company, made a good bit of money, and then went back into solving a problem for people with disabilities, realized it had mainstream success. But when he started in the early 2000s, there weren't touchscreens. And so the iPhone came out and sort of blew it all open. I joined the company a little over 3 years ago as employee number 3, and we now have over 90 employees. We've scaled up quite a bit, and we launched on our first device essentially in January last year. And by the end of this year, we're going to have over 100 million deployments. So, as you're talking scale growth, we're going to have achieved 100 million deployments in less than 2 years, which is, I think, pretty phenomenal growth. You're looking at Facebook or Pandora, or, along those lines for mobile applications that have seen that level of deployment that quickly.
The keyboard is great. I mean, a lot of people, the people who use it say, hey, this is great, I like it. I mean, maybe not for everyone, but almost everybody who picks it up says it's intuitive, they learn it pretty quickly. Maybe not intuitive. It takes a minute to get over the barrier of swiping instead of tapping. Yeah. But then they like it. And actually I go to, I look at Handang or Gizmodo, and people say, what do you think of this phone? I love this phone, but when's it going to get Skype? And I won't say which phone out of Cupertino it is, but they're saying that, right? So what are your distribution models? You're going through Samsung and Nokia, obviously, but are you going to be in app stores, or why not, or why?
Again, we have contracts in place with 9 of the top 11 phone manufacturers. So to be in the App Store has diminishing returns.
Right.
I believe we've been installed on almost 50% of all the Android devices globally.
Yep.
In the U.S., we're probably closer to 75%. So to be part of the App Store, you've got limited returns, and it causes complications against being preloaded and then being part of the App Store experience.
Give you channel conflict.
We also drove that. We thought it was a better user experience to work with OEMs and carriers at a customization and integration and test level as a preload experience, because the keyboard drives the entire usage experience. It's the most widely used application on the device, bar none, and to have that thoroughness and test leads to a better user experience, we found. When you're in the app stores, you find MotoBlur, SenseUI, TouchWiz, they all have certain elements that we have to make minor modifications in order to work exceptionally well and against. So we found the preload integration model to work better for our business.
The other thing to keep in mind is you haven't talked about is the Guinness World Record was broken because of this mode of text entry.
Right.
And not by like a second or something, but something more dramatic, right?
Yeah, it's actually broken, I think, the Guinness World Record in 3 separate occasions. Once by a paraplegic in a wheelchair doing 25 words per minute using head tracking, but also 50, 60 words per minute.
I'll do that to make sure to get our video queued, to get a video queued up. I can call Aaron up in the room. Aaron, if you can get a YouTube video, we know the one we're talking about, but it's basically world record SMS, and it's about a 1-minute video. If you can find that one, that's one of the ones we wanted to play. So people are texting faster. They're getting more user satisfaction. You said you're going through the OEM channel. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that ties into one of the general themes that we're trying to say here. And that when I launched off this morning, I said, listen, for some people, over the top is the right avenue. But for some people, you can, going through a carrier or going through, in this case, device manufacturers, harder to do, but could have potentially a bigger payoff. And what you're saying is you're seeing a bigger payoff in terms of distribution and in quality of service, the quality control you're able to offer versus app stores or over-the-top solutions.
We also had a very well-developed technology, lots of patent protection around it, which OEMs care about. If they're going to preload something, they want to make sure it's sort of free and clear in the IP realm. Certainly that's becoming more important given the litigation status out there. But we also had Cliff Kushler invented T9. I mean, there's not an OEM relationship we couldn't have a meeting with based on his prior experience.
Phenomenal. So in the 3 years you said you've been to work with the company and trying to get distribution, what kind of lessons have you learned that you may share with other entrepreneurs who are trying to think of the handset softwares? Like, it's difficult to get your software put in a handset. So what are some of the bruises you've got and the lessons you learned?
Well, there's a push-pull with the carriers and the OEMs. OEMs sign the business to us, and they care about pennies per device, right? You start negotiating pennies down off contracts. But to a carrier who's buying the device at $400, and I'll buy this wholesale $400 from you, I'll throw 10 million marketing commitment in there. They don't care about the pennies so much. They care about a better user experience. So we spent a lot of time working with the carriers in convincing them it's a better user experience. They did substantial focus group testing, and that's why we're in the number of carrier specs in the U.S. In fact, I think all the U.S. carriers are, if not require, then request us is to be preload aspect to the device. So use whatever leverage you have in working through the relationships, whether that's carriers, the OEMs, and the press channels as well, to build up the constituencies that support your input style.
So you mentioned something that's interesting, and I don't think a lot of people understand is pennies matter to OEMs, because we hear a lot of startups say, listen, this is a fantastic thing. It makes the device a lot better, and it would only cost $2 per handset. And then I've seen the carriers in the room go, oh, forget it, $2 per handset, that's a problem. And the handset vendors, so why is $2 per handset a problem? Because the consumers, as consumers we know, we go to the store, if you buy an iPhone off the shelf, for example, it's a $700 product. So why would $2 in a handset?
Well, let's be clear, we're not at $2 per handset.
Right. Okay.
But the entire ecosystem is getting squeezed from, you take a look at a device and there are probably 500 different vendors supplying an element of components into that. And if they can, eliminate 10% cost across the board of every single person, and you're taking a look at, massive squeezing of margins in the industry at the OEM level. And that's been of benefit to us. When you take a look at a physical keyboard, it's not just the slider form factor adds bulk to it, but there's physical inventory. There's 25 keyboard layouts around the world. Azerty, QWERTY, Cyrillic, and the inventory logistics management of that physical inventory processing and shipping that around the world. So when you can go to soft screen, touchscreen devices, it's just one software build can supply a consistent experience across the world.
And I think as Aaron's queuing up the video, we'll go to that next. But I think it's so important for the entrepreneur community, because when you think it's a 500 plus device, maybe it's subsidized down lower, but when you know a little bit, you know that it's really an expensive device, and you think, hey, my solution is so good, and it's only $2 per, but you got to understand that's a deal stopper. Like, you can't go to Samsung and Nokia and say, I only want $2 per unit. What a great deal! It just won't fly, right? I mean, that's something everybody needs to walk away and know that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've developed a phenomenal piece of software. I could argue if I were in the App Store, it'd be worth dollars, tens of dollars to people in their increased productivity. But when you go to the OEM community, they're in the tens of cents, in expectations of that declining. So, like everybody in the industry, we also have to look forward to how are we going to continue to innovate, what new features and services and monetization schemes are we going to be able to add.
All right, Aaron, are we teed up? All right, so let's have a quick video on, and we can see Skype in action.
You don't want your slide, you want.
That doesn't look like the right. Oh, that's the. This is the text that the person was challenged to. And I don't know.
Years of hard work. You don't want your years of hard work.
Wow.
You don't want your slides, you want your Apple iPhone.
This is an iPhone challenging our Swype Guinness record.
Do you know this video?
No.
It's apparently not loading very well. So.
Yeah. No. We don't need to show that one.
Let's throw we'll skip that one, and then we'll throw the next question at Rakesh and say, what are the advantages of partnering with the telco in terms of getting into the new market that you've found, other startups and with Swype in general? What can you bring to them in terms of getting into, obviously, Japan? And can you help them in getting into other markets of the rest of the world?
Yes, we have and we can. I guess in the case of Swype, it was fairly straightforward because we focused on the Japanese market. One of the advantages, obviously, is having a significant market share in Japan and the being in the middle of the ecosystem that is Japan. It's a lot easier going through a carrier like Docomo in terms of introductions to the ecosystem partners, whether it's handset providers or software suppliers or content providers and so on and so forth. Otherwise, it would be very, very difficult for cultural and other reasons to try and penetrate that kind of market. The other thing is Docomo also has a joint venture in India with Tata Teleservices, and so that's another opportunity there with Docomo to have an introduction into the Indian market, and we're starting to look at companies that might be able to do that as well. The innovations group that I just talked about at the start of the summer is looking beyond just outside of investing opportunities from a business development, joint development opportunities. And in that, it would be an opportunity for a startup to be able to offer its technology or solution in the form of network services that Docomo might offer, whether it's in the Japan market or elsewhere. Again, that model is being worked on as we speak, and I think it'll be on a case-by-case basis to see which kind of services might be available.
All right, great, good answer. That's questions regarding what's next for Swype. You've got a lot of successes behind your belt. So what's the next step for you? Is it remain focused on key? Is there something you divest or diverge into, or what's?
We've always said our goal is to be on 1 billion devices, and I think with the growth and the number of OEM deals that we have, that's. We're certainly on track for achieving some numbers that hit that level of scale on a cumulative basis. So we're on phones. We've got the swipe mode, but we also have predictive tap. I think your iPhone keyboard, so that's built in the same interface. Yep. We're on a number of tablets. See us becoming ubiquitous across phones and tablets, and I know Comcast guys were just in. We want to be part of everyone's daily life. So you go from your TV with your remote control or your Microsoft Connect style gesture input. Yep. You go to your smart appliance. You go to your in-car navigation system, your phone, your tablet. We want to be the default keyboard and consistent experience across all of that. The recognition algorithms for the words that you use most frequently are the words you've added to your user dictionary.
Yep.
They'll travel with you on a cloud service basis, syncing across all that. You'll switch different devices. You'll switch network providers. Your recognition algorithms will go along with you, just like it will track you with your contacts.
Yeah.
Because this becomes incredibly powerful and beneficial to people. And we think having those cloud services track people are also going to be beneficial. Some of the ways that we've worked with carriers in the U.S., we're soon to have language downloads. We preload on a device here in the U.S. that typically has English and Spanish on it. You're excluding every immigrant population that might want to use a different language as their primary keyboard in that basis. You don't have the ability to download additional languages on most devices now. Mm-hmm. So from a carrier marketing perspective, they can do very specific ethnic marketing campaigns based around that population. So at a carrier level, these things become quite important. And I think you're going to see a lot more cloud connectivity between the keyboard having some cloud synchronization services, be it language downloads, user database backup services, sharing across other devices, and that's going to lead to a huge slew of additional products and services for us.
Phenomenal. So there's a lot of room for growth, a lot of runway for you just sticking in the keyboard space.
Just look at the touchscreen projected growth across all the device category platforms.
Basically, you'll follow the screens, essentially,
yes.
the touch screens.
Yeah.
Great. Rakesh, how do you suggest other entrepreneurs work with you going forward? You're out there talking to people probably today even, and next little while. What's the best way of connecting with Docomo from an investment perspective, and then maybe from if there's not going to be investment, but somebody who just wants to penetrate the company?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody here is from the Docomo Innovations Group, but I've been the point of contact for the most part for the startups company, and then I can direct them either from an investment point of view if that's of interest, or just for business development, and go from there. So I think that would be the best way to go.
All right. So I'm going to look up for any hands for questions. Got Arv in the middle, I believe.
Yeah,
That's what Mike right there for you.
just a quick question. It was interesting to hear how you went. It's kind of a chicken and egg question in a sense. Okay, you know, as a small startup, I'm just up the road in Vancouver. Okay, from you guys, and just you have limited resources. You go after the operators or you go after the OEMs. Okay, you know. Sounds like you basically went after both of them. How did you pick one before the other, or how do you actually get an operator to put you yourself into the specifications to get OEMs basically being forced to deal with you? You know,
all of the above. No, and you're right, limited resources. So I myself have somewhat of a carrier background. I co-founded two MVNOs, Boost Mobile and Amp Mobile, and headed up the product and data services. So I procured devices from OEMs, and I'm familiar with that level of business model and knowing what carriers want. So when I joined the company, I knew a wide variety of carriers that I should have conversations with, but I also knew that it was going to be the OEMs that paid us. So before we ever launched with a carrier, I had signed several OEM deals, Nokia, Samsung being the two biggest. So they went to the carriers and said, hey, we're going to preload this on device. Good timing for us. The iOS was out there, iPhone. Android needed a competing, differentiating user experience. I mean, Samsung has spent tens of millions of dollars on TV campaigns globally in support of Swype, with showing it as a key differentiating feature against the iPhone. With carriers, we wanted to make sure that they saw it as an enhanced user experience. And a lot of companies would be asked to do co-marketing commitments, and we don't have that level of marketing dollars. What I would do is I'd send any one of my resources, testers, product managers, project managers, they have a lot of field sales training rallies for the carriers, a lot of retail store visits. We'd bring T-shirts and hand it out. So we'd work with the carriers to get all their field salespeople highly knowledgeable about Swype. And you're just building a virtuous cycle. The more positive response that the carriers have around the product, the more that they're going to dictate it back to the OEMs, and the more the OEMs are going to preload it onto devices. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. With us specifically, we get paid by OEMs. I know that's where my bread's buttered, but carriers certainly influence. And if they want it on a device, you know, most OEMs are going to bend over backwards to please the carrier and provide that level of support.
I would add that as a carrier, the value proposition presented by the solution was very compelling. So I think when you're talking about something where the user is interacting on a regular basis and the value proposition is so compelling and differentiated offering relative to anything else that other people are offering, that makes it much more likely that a carrier would want to participate in this. And also I want to point out that in this specific case, the company was able to take initial dollars and investment dollars from carriers, from strategic partners first, handset providers and a carrier in this case. Normally, the traditional path is you go to financial VCs first, and then you get to the strategic VCs later on. In this case, the company was able to, not get as diluted as much perhaps, but more importantly, get a lot of value from carriers and take their investment dollars initially first, and then only later on get financial VC money.
Yeah, trust me in that I'd go to a carrier and say, I just closed investment from Nokia and Samsung, and you're treated with a high degree of credit. Oh, this is the next standard. Okay, great. Yeah, let's. But you have to win the end user too. I mean, that's absolutely crucial. It has to be a better user experience, and that's the ultimate focus on us. And carriers or OEMs, there's new input style, new paradigm in many, and they would try to say, oh, I want it to work this way. And like, no, that's not going to be a good user experience. And that's where we had to put our foot down and really demand that this is our product, this is a new way of style, and I think this is what's going to work in the end user perspective. And I think we've built up a consumer brand. Our partners have certainly helped us build that brand. And when you ultimately have the end user support, it's going to continue to flow that virtuous cycle of the OEMs and carriers wanting to see it on devices.
Mike?
I see Huawei right here. We were their 2010 Technology Supplier of the Year. And that they labeled us that, and we helped improve their carrier relations significantly because we significantly enhanced their user experience, and they got that feedback from their carrier partners in the U.S.
I think the first time I tried Swype might have been on an iPhone. So I'm just curious because it was at the very beginning when you first presented the Telecom Council. So were you then making it freely available, or was it a beta version that I was able to access?
No, that was a competing product that has not been commercialized.
So we got it through some developer channel or something like that.
Yeah, no, it was a different technology company that was trying to commercialize it, and
Okay.
they've never been able to essentially commercialize that product.
All right, good. So I think I don't know if there was any other hands up there. Did we miss anyone? No? All right, we're all set then. Well, thank you very much, Rakesh. Thank you, Mike.
Great, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks, Rakesh.
Thanks, Rakesh. Apologize to Rakesh, Mike, and everyone for the video troubles and Rakesh's microphone. Hopefully our next speakers, we got batteries and they're ready to go.